We're recording. All right. So when we last left India, it was in a state of emergency. State of emergency in 1975. Indira Gandhi didn't like those mean newspapers saying mean things about her. And so she declares a state of emergency and arrests everybody. The Indian Constitution gives her the power to do this. But it's supposed to be used, it's intended to be used on emergencies like, earthquakes and hurricanes and wars and stuff, right? It's not supposed to be used the way she uses it. It's never intended to be used the way she uses it. So she comes up with something called her 20-point economic plan. And her 20-point economic plan is basically where she is going to nationalize almost every industry in India, almost every single one. And then the government will tell those companies what to do and how to do it. And then once the companies are doing exactly what the government will tell them to do, then the government can maybe release them, maybe. Now that should sound familiar to you guys, right? Because Indira, I told you that Indira is like 1 or 2 steps away from a communist. Well, that's a pretty communist plan, right? So she is trying to exert a lot of government control over the industries. This is going to be profoundly unpopular, okay? But she's not done yet. She's actually going to be abusing her power in a lot of different ways. The parliament tries to recall her and hold another election, and she refuses to let the election happen. She just doesn't let it happen. She tries to stop the election. She does stop the election, right? And she starts to just arrest parliament members who are opposing her, maybe the worst thing that she does is her boy, this guy right here, Sanjay Gandhi. Sanjay Gandhi, he is going to, excuse me, he's going to lead a program of forced sterilization. Now, Michael, do you remember AP geography? Do you remember the demographic transition model? Give me a thumbs up if you remember the demographic transition model from AP Geography. Yash, it's not about India. You should remember
it. I think like one of the main things it talked about was how the reduction of how many children you have is an indication as to how developed the nation is.
Yeah, that's one of the end results, right? One of the end result takeaways from it. In the model, what happens to a country that's in stage 2 to stage 3? What's happening to its population? The population rising rapidly or dropping, or what is it doing? Yeah, it's rising rapidly, right? At this point in time in the 1970s, India is leaving stage 2 and moving into stage 3 of the demographic transition model. And India is at maximum population growth. Okay, this is where India is jumping in the world in its population. This is where we're going to get the India that we have today, the monster population that India has today, right? India at this point, women in India in the 1970s are producing an average of 6 to 7 babies, right? 6 to 7 babies is their children is what they're having as an average. That means half of the women of India are producing more than 7 babies. More than half, right? So India's population is exploding. And Indira Gandhi, one of her 20 points is that she needs to slow the population growth down, right? Because India has too many kids. It can't build schools fast enough. It can't build houses fast enough. It doesn't have enough jobs. It has too many kids. Well, Sanjay Gandhi leads this plan of sterilization. Indira says that the problem is with men, because men who are sleeping around can produce babies with all sorts of women, right? One man could produce 30 or 40 babies in a month, 30 babies in a month if he sleeps with a different woman every night, right? But a woman can really only ever produce 1 baby in a month, no matter how many men she sleeps with, right? Because at a certain point, she's just pregnant, and that's just how pregnancy works. Like, you don't get more pregnant, right? So they set this up where you start getting buses and vans driving through the poor areas of the city, and they just grab any men they can find, like drunk on the streets or whatever, and they inject him with a drug to make him go to sleep, like a morphine, right? Inject him with that, and then he wakes up having had a vasectomy. And they're just performing forced vasectomies in the back of these trucks. Okay? And they're not asking for permission, they're just doing it. Because Indira has labeled these men as socially undesirable men. Right? Look at this number. They do this to 8.3 million men. Forcibly sterilize that many men. That is so many forced sterilizations. It's insane. Okay. Well, Indira is perhaps the greatest threat to Indian democracy that we've ever seen, right? Like, Indians maybe will tell you that Pakistan is the greatest threat, but I think Indira is a bigger threat, right? And Indira is so profoundly unpopular that she actually steps down. She steps down. She's got protests and rallies against her, right? Massive, massive protests against her. She steps down, and this guy right here, Maraji Desai, becomes the prime minister. I told you he wasn't going away, right? Okay. Ilha, do you remember where we saw him from before? Oh, come on. Last class period. How about you, Drew? Do you remember?
So he was the polar opposite of what's his name? Polar opposite of Indira. He was a conservative,
Yeah.
and he negotiated with, I think he has a long name, the guy on the left.
Yeah. Kumaraswamy Kamaraj.
Yeah. About the whole language issue.
Yeah. Okay. So Desai is like, yes, that's perfect, Drew. Now that Patel's dead, Desai is probably the biggest name in the conservative politics at this point, right? And so Desai is going to rise up, and Indira had thrown him in jail, but he's out now. He's out now, and he becomes prime minister. Now, here's the deal. Desai is going to be prime minister for a couple of years, but he's going to be very, very unpopular. He's basically going to spend his entire presidency trying to undo the damage that Indira did, right? He's trying to like get the government off of all these businesses and things like that. He's basically going to spend his entire time doing that. And while he does that, the Sikhs have become more violent. So this is in the late 70s and the early 80s. Okay. That Sikh nationalist movement. What was the name of the Sikh independence movement? Somebody unmute yourself and tell me. It was in the notes last time. What's the Sikh independence movement called?
Khalistan or something.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's the Khalistan movement. At this point in time, the Khalistan movement has started to turn into a terrorist movement. This guy right here is kind of like the Osama bin Laden of India. Okay, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. He's like the Osama bin Laden of Sikhs, the Sikh Osama bin Laden. And he is organizing a Khalistan movement that is blowing stuff up. He's also going to become really famous for hijacking planes. He's going to be leading, he conducts, I think, 2 plane hijackings where they hijack the plane and like kill the pilot and force the plane to land and stuff, right? Indians are frustrated that the economy is having a hard time because it's, everyone's still poor. Desai is not very popular. He's actually viewed as being kind of weak and effeminate, right? The irony of him being viewed effeminate, but Indira not being viewed effeminate. It's kind of ironic, right? And Desai looking as being weak on terrorism results in Indira Gandhi being re-elected in the early 80s. Yep, they re-elect her. And she runs on this platform of, I'm tough, I know how to deal with terrorism, I'm the right man for the job. Now, she's not part of the INC. The INC won't let her in the party anymore. They've kicked her out of the party. And so she forms the INC Reformed Party, which is basically just her. It's the INCR, the INC Reformed Party, which is basically just her. And she just says, I don't need your INC. I have my own INC. And so it's basically just herself. So she clamps down on terrorism. And the Indian people, they are criticizing her, right? And they're like, are you going to take over the newspapers again? And she says, no, I won't. Are you going to, destroy Indian democracy again? And she says, no, right? But she says, I will take care of terrorism. So she does. Here's the problem. As American presidents will figure out, taking care of terrorism is a messy business, right? It's a messy business. It involves a lot of people. Well, Bhindranwale goes into hiding in the Golden Temple of Amritsar. Wow, wow. Okay, the Golden Temple of Amritsar is the holiest site in all of Sikhdom. This is the holiest temple in the Sikh religion. He and his terrorist brothers are hiding out in the holiest site in all of Sikhdom. Now, Tiffany, if you are the Iron Lady, you are Indira Gandhi, what are you going to do?
I'm not too sure, but she's kind of crazy. So I kind of assume she would just kind of not really care about the temple and just try to invade it or do something crazy, not thinking about how it could ruin this holy place.
You are 100% correct. I'm not sure if she should do this, but she does do this. She sends the army into the temple. And when she sends the army into the temple, I'm talking like tanks on the outside door, artillery cannons, like full army gear, like soldiers, machine guns. They blow up the back wall and go through a hole in the wall. We get into a running gun battle through the holiest site in the entire Sikh religion. The good news, she kills the terrorists. She gets them. The bad news, she also does considerable damage to the temple. Now, as you can expect, the Sikhs are furious about this. Furious about this, right? The Sikhs didn't like this guy anyway, right? Most Sikhs didn't like this guy. Most Sikhs are like, dude's a murdering terrorist. He needs to be caught, right? But they also don't want a Hindu army running through their holiest site, right? The Sikhs, you have to remember that the Sikhs have just lived through partition. They had just lived through Hindu mobs and Muslim mobs murdering their people, right? Murdering their parents, murdering their grandparents. Like, the Sikhs have already been kicked in the teeth by the Hindus already, and now this happens. The Sikhs are furious about this, absolutely furious. So the result is that the Sikhs assassinate her. They assassinate her a couple months later. In fact, she's assassinated by her own bodyguards. She has Sikh bodyguards, and they kill her. They murder her. So, Ilha, I got a question for you, man. Why did she have Sikh bodyguards? Seems like a real problem, don't you think? Why do you think she had Sikh bodyguards? Take a shot.
Not sure. Maybe to like try to like lower tension between the Sikhs and other people by like or like the everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm not sure really.
You're on the right track. Yeah, Drew, what were you gonna say?
Isn't she trying to be like, those people that are like, oh, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. Isn't she trying to say, oh, I don't hate Sikhs, my bodyguards are Sikh?
Yeah, it's a combination of between Ilhan Drew. It's kind of both of those things, right? She's trying to, her Minister of Defense says, you absolutely should get rid of your Sikh bodyguards. The Minister of Defense is like, do not have Sikh bodyguards. That's crazy, right? And she says, I'm a woman of the people. We're not at war with the Sikhs. We're at war with terrorism. And we are a champion of all the people. I'm a champion of the people. I'm a woman of the people. I want to prove that I'm a friend to the Sikhs and that the Sikhs don't have to fear me. Well, didn't work out because they murdered her. The immediate result is that Hindus explode into anti-Sikh violence and we're going to kill another 15,000 Sikhs in mass lynchings, race riot lynching style, mass rapes and lynchings and stuff again. Now, I got a question for you, okay? So President Wen Taozeng, you've been elected president, and you have Mormon terrorists in the state of Utah who are blowing things up and killing folks. And those Mormon terrorists are hiding in the middle of the Salt Lake Temple. Wen Tao, President Zhang, how are you going to deal with them?
I don't actually really know.
Well,
I don't feel like there's too good of a way to deal with it.
You're the president, man. You got elected into the big seat. What are you going to do? You got to do something. If you do nothing, then your entire party will lose the next election.
I guess I'd probably... I don't know. I guess you kind of have to invade it at that point.
Ooh, President Zhang is going to raid. Hopefully he doesn't have Mormon bodyguards. How about President Liu? President Liu, what do you do?
I do the cool method, which is
Oh,
sending in a spy to sabotage from inside.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Like maybe like a like Black Widow, she can like jump and like break their necks with her thighs,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we don't live in a weird action movie, so Michael's plan isn't going to work very well. All right. Drew, President Rachakonda, what are you going to do, man?
So pretty much, I guess you would send in, I don't know, special forces, Navy SEALs or something. But instead of deploying artillery and excessive measures like Gandhi did, I guess you could raid the Mormon temple without having to blow it up at the same time.
Well, she did send Indian special forces in. They were special forces. Yeah.
But why artillery though, and like tanks and? Like,
well, she had the tanks and artillery on the outside, in case something happened. Yeah. She didn't like drive tanks through the temple. It was special forces in the temple, but the special forces are like blowing up walls and stuff in the inside of the temple.
Wait, could you just like try to get the Sikh population to go against it by saying that the holiest place is housing these evil people?
Yeah, maybe, right? You go on TV and you try to convince them, The Sikh population is furious with her. The Sikhs basically say that you should have had Sikh soldiers, not Hindu soldiers, right? It's our temple, you send in Sikh soldiers, because the Sikh soldiers would have been more respectful, right? And B, you didn't have to send soldiers in at all. All you had to do was block all the exits and wait for him. Just let him starve to death. right? That's what the Sikhs wanted to happen, is you just cut off the water, cut off the power, and wait. And just wait for the guy to like get thirsty and hungry and then either die or surrender. You know, that's what the Sikhs wanted to do, but Indira didn't want to do that plan. That plan was given to her, but she thought that that plan was too weak. She thought it was too weak and that the Indian people had elected her to be strong. And so she went with the strong plan, right? This is going to sound even nuttier to you guys, but when she gets murdered, her son becomes prime minister. Yeah. Rajiv Ratnagandhi becomes prime minister, and he's going to remain prime minister through the 1980s. We're going to get a series of like not super important prime ministers here through the 80s and 90s. But look at the time that we're dealing with, right? From 1947 all the way till 1989, we have had the INC in charge of everything. And not just the INC, we haven't even gotten out of Nehru's family yet, right? It's starting to look a lot less like a democracy and more like a monarchy, right? It looks like Nehru may have just crowned himself king and just didn't tell anyone, right? I mean, if your king dies and then your kid takes over and then that kid dies and then your grandkid takes over, that sounds like a monarchy to me, right? Like it sounds like a monarchy, and this is going to be a big problem, right? The result is, and Rajiv Ratnagandhi is, you know, kind of popular, kind of. He gets assassinated as well. The Tamils assassinate him, and the Tamils assassinate him for negotiating peace in Sri Lanka, and they don't like the peace that he negotiated, and so they assassinate him as well. But the result is the rise of the BJP. The BJP, right? If you remember the BJP from before, the BJP is right here, the Bharatiya Janata Party, right? That's the ultra-conservative party. Up until this point, the BJP has been something close to like a fascist party, right? But by the time we get to the 1980s, the BJP is moving away from that fascist party. It was like a small, super concentrated kind of fascist party. But what had happened was the Nehru family, the Nehru Gandhi family, had become kind of so corrupt and so problematic that that entire conservative wing of the INC just said, nah, F this, we're out, right? And they left the INC and they went to the next biggest party, which was the BJP. So if you think of this as a metaphor, right? That through the 50s and 60s, the BJP was like a little Mini Cooper, a little teeny tiny car with a fascist driving the car, right? By the time we get to the early 90s, that Mini Cooper has been transformed into a giant bus, right? Lots and lots of people on it, but the fascist is still at the driver's wheel. Is still at the wheel, right? That's kind of where we are today. Vajpayee he becomes prime minister during the 90s, and he's our first BJP prime minister. It's not fair to call him a fascist or a nationalist really, but he is conservative. He's going to spend a lot of his time removing the government restrictions on businesses, removing the government influence on businesses. He's going to spend basically the whole time doing that. Then they elect a Sikh who runs in the INC, Manmohan Singh. And Manmohan Singh is seen as a Barack Obama kind of figure, right? Is seen as this like bold step forward saying, oh, the Sikhs used to be this like forgotten minority, but now look, you know, we've raised them up. The Sikh is a prime minister now. And he is an economist, and he's overseeing, by this point in time, India's economy is starting to grow quite a bit. By the end of the 90s and all through the 2000s, for the last 20 years, the Indian economy has been growing a lot. It's been growing, you know, about 5 to 8% a year, which is quite a bit. The United States economy grows about 1% a year, right? So the Indian economy is growing very, very quickly. And this last 20-year period of time, more Indians have been taken out of poverty than ever before, right? But culturally speaking, so many Hindus are upset that a Sikh is elected that we get that conservative swing again and we elect a nationalist Modi, right? Who's very much more like a Donald Trump kind of nationalist. He's a lot closer to a fascist. He's a lot closer to that fascist person at the wheel. Okay. Today, the BJP occupies like 2/3 of the Indian parliament, right? So it is by far the largest party. It's by far the largest party, and the INC is the second largest party still, but the INC is dealing with this legacy of, years, decades and decades and decades. Lots of Indians remember Indira, and they remember Rajiv Gandhi, and they remember these problems. Okay. All right, we have one more class that we're going to do on the caste system, but I think the caste system needs a whole period, basically. Okay, what we can do, so we have a couple of options. Well, it's fine. We'll do the caste on Tuesday. We'll do the caste on Tuesday. I can help you guys with your essays. I'm trying to think when's a good time to help you with essays. What we can do is on Thursday, we can kind of work with the essays, and then you guys will take them after Thursday if you want to do that. What do you guys think? Or you don't need help really at this point? What do you think?
Wait, well, when is the test again?
The test is next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Yeah, the test is next
Okay.
Thursday. Yeah.
Okay.
It's next Thursday. So the in-person classes, first period is not going to get any class time to work on their essays because first period is behind just because A days, because we had President's Day, Martin Luther King Day, and Snow Day. But B Day is done today. So B Day has next Tuesday to work on their essays. You guys are behind because I have a smaller time period with you guys, right? So like I have to break up lessons in smaller bits for you. And so you guys are in sync with the A Day. So I don't have class time to help you with the essays. So we can schedule that some other time if you want, or you can come in during app, or I don't know what you want to do. What do you guys want to do? Or just write your essays. You don't need the help. Josh, what do you think?
We could probably review them on Thursday. You said that we had time to review them on Thursday. Is that right? Or
yeah, we can. We can, but I don't want a situation. What I want to avoid, I really want to avoid, this is what happened last time, is you guys weren't really prepared and I ended up just kind of giving you answers, right? If you guys aren't prepared on Thursday, then I'm just going to hang up, right? Because if you guys don't come prepared for the conversation, then you're telling me you don't need my help. Does that seem fair to you guys? Right? So I will log in on Thursday next week for the same regular time and help whoever is ready and prepared to go. But if you guys aren't ready and prepared, then we'll just hang up and let you take your test and you'll be fine. Does that seem fair? Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you understand and it seems fair. Okay. Then that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do.